That intense connection you feel with your spiritual coach, the one that seemed to happen instantly, like you've known them lifetimes? The way they understand your pain like no one else ever has? What if I told you that's not a soul connection? It's trauma bonding? Today, I'm exposing how spiritual coaches deliberately create trauma bonds to ensure you never leave, never heal, and never stop paying. This is the manipulation technique that makes cult leaders look amateur. I need you to understand something before we continue. Trauma bonding is not just unhealthy attachment. It's a specific psychological phenomenon where abuse and kindness cycle to create addiction-level dependency. And spiritual coaches have perfected using your own wounds against you. The anatomy of a trauma. Trauma bonding occurs when someone creates a cycle of abuse and reward that mirrors early childhood wounds. The key is intermittent reinforcement. Unpredictable cycles of pain and pleasure that create stronger attachment than consistent kindness ever could. It's the same mechanism that keeps people in abusive relationships, and spiritual coaches use it with surgical precision. Here's the formula. They trigger your core wound, abandonment, rejection, unworthiness, then position themselves as the only source of relief. They destabilize your sense of self, then offer themselves as your new identity foundation. They create the pain, then sell themselves as the cure. But the cure always requires more wounding, creating an endless cycle. Spiritual context makes this particularly insidious. They frame the pain as necessary for growth, the dependency as divine connection, the abuse as breaking through resistance. You're not being manipulated. You're being activated. You're not trauma bonded. Your soul contracted. The spiritual language masks the psychological violence. Phase 1. The wound mapping. Every trauma bond begins with reconnaissance. Spiritual coaches are expert wound mappers. In your first sessions, they're not just listening to your story. They're cataloging your traumas, identifying your triggers, mapping your abandonment points. They need this information to create precise trauma activation. Watch how they do it. Tell me about your childhood. When did you first feel unseen? What's your earliest memory of not being enough? They're gathering ammunition. Every wound you reveal becomes a future tool for bonding you to them. They often use intuitive readings to accelerate this process. I'm sensing deep mother wounds. Your inner child is screaming to be seen. You have past life trauma around betrayal. Whether accurate or not, they're fishing for your reaction, noting what makes you tear up, what makes you desperate for healing. Rebecca thought her coach was incredibly gifted when she sensed Rebecca's father abandonment issues in their first meeting. What Rebecca didn't know was that the coach had stalked her social media, saw photos without her father, and made an educated guess. The psychic hit was calculated wound identification. Phase 2, the activation cycle once they've mapped. Your wounds, they begin deliberate activation cycles. They trigger your abandonment by being suddenly unavailable. They activate your unworthiness by subtle criticism. They poke your rejection wounds by creating inner-outer group dynamics. But, and this is crucial, they always follow activation. With intense soothing Monday, they cancel your session last minute. You spiral into abandonment panic Tuesday. They call with an emergency opening just for you because you're so special. You feel chosen, saved Wednesday. During session, they point out your resistance to healing. You feel shamed Thursday. They text saying they were up all night thinking about your breakthrough potential. You feel seen. This cycle creates what psychologists call an intermittent reinforcement schedule, the most addictive pattern known to human psychology. Casino slot machines use this. Drug dealers use this. And spiritual coaches have mastered it. Phase 3. Identity fusion as the Cargio. Trauma bonding deepens. They begin identity fusion. Your sense of self becomes inseparable from their validation. They don't just coach you. They become your mirror, your meaning maker, your sense of worth. They'll say things like, "I see who you really are," when no one else does. Our connection transcends normal coach-client relationships. You're not my client. You're my soul family. I've never felt this connected to someone I'm helping. This isn't love, it's enmeshment. They're not seeing your true self. They're implanting their projection of who you need to be for them. The fusion serves their needs. A client who can't leave, because leaving would mean losing themselves. David couldn't make any decision without checking with his spiritual coach. What to wear, what to eat, who to date, everything required her input. When friends suggested this was unhealthy, he defended it. She sees my highest self. Without her reflection, I lose my way. He wasn't connected to her. He was fused with her. The gaslighting component trauma bonding requires reality distortion. When you start noticing the pattern, questioning the dynamics, they gaslight with spiritual bypassing. Your ego is resisting the depth of our work. This discomfort means we're hitting your core wounds. Good. If you were ready for this level of healing, you wouldn't question it. Your trust issues are projecting onto our sacred container. Only someone still in victim consciousness would see this as unhealthy and make your accurate perceptions evidence of your brokenness. Your healthy boundaries become blocks to healing. Your intuition that something's wrong becomes resistance to transformation. They trauma bond you, then shame you for recognizing it. The financial exploitation trauma bonds create irrational financial decisions. You'll pay anything to maintain the connection, to avoid the activation of abandonment, to get the next hit of validation. They know this and structure their pricing accordingly. They'll create financial pressure then, offer solutions that deepen the bond. Can't afford the next level? They'll offer a payment plan that keeps you connected longer. Thinking of leaving? Suddenly there's a scholarship available, but only if you commit to a year. The money isn't just about greed, it's about control. Financial investment creates cognitive dissonance. The more you pay, the harder it is to admit you're being manipulated. The debt becomes part of the trauma bond. You can't leave because you've invested too much. Breaking trauma bonds with spiritual coaches. If you recognize yourself in this pattern, here's how to break free. First, go no contact. Trauma bonds require intermittent reinforcement to maintain. Every contact reactivates the cycle. Block everything: phone, email, social media. Your nervous system needs complete cessation of the trigger-soothe pattern. Second, expect withdrawal. You will feel like you're dying. Trauma bond withdrawal can be as intense as drug withdrawal, anxiety, depression, obsessive thoughts, even physical symptoms. This is your nervous system recalibrating. It will pass. Third, reality test with safe others. Trauma bonds distort perception. Talk to people outside the coach's influence. Show them texts, describe sessions. Let their shock validate what you've normalized. Fourth, grieve the fantasy. You're not just losing a coach, you're losing the projected savior, the false identity, the trauma bond high. Grieve it all. The connection you felt was real to your nervous system, even if manufactured. Fifth, get proper trauma therapy. Not another spiritual coach, actual trauma therapy. EMDR, somatic experiencing. Someone who understands trauma bonds and can help you heal the original wounds the coach exploited. The healing journey. Healing from spiritual coach trauma bonding is complex because it hits multiple levels. Psychological. You must rebuild your sense of self outside the reflection. Spiritual. You must reclaim your direct connection to divine without intermediaries. Financial. You must recover from any debt or exploitation. Social. You must often rebuild friendships lost to the coach's influence. Nervous system. You must regulate without the trigger soothe cycle, but healing is possible. Every survivor I've worked with reports the same thing. Once free from the trauma bond, they see clearly how manufactured it was. The soul connection reveals itself as calculated manipulation. The special relationship shows as textbook abuse. Dynamics. The clarity is both devastating and liberating. For coaches, ethical alternatives. If you're a coach recognizing these patterns in yourself, stop immediately. Get supervision. Do your own trauma work. Learn about ethical boundaries. Here's what healthy coaching looks like. Consistent, predictable availability within boundaries. Empowering client autonomy. Not creating dependency. Celebrating when clients outgrow you. Clear professional boundaries. Not soul family enmeshment. Transparent practices. Not mystical manipulation. You can create profound transformation without trauma bonding. In fact, real transformation requires the opposite: safety, consistency, and respect for client sovereignty. The red flags checklist. Here's your checklist for spotting trauma. Bonding with spiritual coaches. Intense connection that happened unusually fast cycles. Of criticism abandonment, followed by intense validation. You feel worse between sessions. Only better during. They know your wounds in detail and reference them often. Boundary attempts are labeled as resistance. Financial pressure paired with special arrangements. You can't imagine life without them. Other relationships suffer because of this. One they claimed unique understanding of youth. Relationship feels more like addiction than support. 3 or more. You're likely trauma bonded. Your sovereignty return. As I close, I want to speak directly to anyone recognizing themselves in this video. The intensity you felt wasn't divine connection. It was nervous system hijacking. The specialness wasn't soul recognition. It was wound exploitation. The inability to leave wasn't spiritual contract. It was trauma bonding. You are not broken for falling for this. Trauma bonding works because it hijacks our deepest need for connection and uses our wounds against us. Spiritual coaches who do this are exploiting not just your trust, but your neurological wiring. Your path forward isn't through another coach, another healer, another external authority. It's through reclaiming your own sovereignty, healing your own wounds with qualified help, and learning to validate yourself. The divine connection you seek, it's not through them. It never was. It's direct, immediate, and needs no intermediary. Anyone creating trauma bonds to keep you attached is not connecting you to God. They're playing God with your nervous system. Have you experienced trauma bonding with a spiritual coach? Share your story below. Breaking silence breaks the bond. And if someone you know is caught in this dynamic, share this video. Sometimes seeing the pattern clearly is the first step to freedom. Remember, real healing creates independence, not addiction. Real coaches celebrate your sovereignty, not your dependency. Real spiritual connection liberates. It never imprisons.